I want to catch up with foreign policy expert Dr Keith Suter. Now, he's in Sydney as well. He's in the free part of Sydney outside of this quarantine hellhole. Thanks for joining us, Keith. Good to talk to you. I wanted to get your thoughts first up on Remembrance Day. 102 years ago now is the date we're commemorating, but it really does ring down through the ages, doesn't it?
It does indeed, and it's interesting to note that with the War Memorial in Canberra, are trying to map out all of the war memorials across this country. We've got so many little villages and hamlets that have created their own war memorials, and for the first time we're going to get a national database of all of those war memorials where events get held each November, and of course for Anzac Day as well. It is very important. We've got to keep remembering that the world is not yet at peace, and there is still a need for defence forces, and this is a very good opportunity to remind people about the importance of having defence forces and the work they carry out.
I know my children had special events to do with Remembrance Day today at school, which is a good thing. Do you think that we are doing enough to incorporate this history into our national story? Of course, Anzac Day is a big focus nationally, and I think we're all relieved that that's not dying out. There's been a real focus and energy about Anzac Day over recent years. What are your thoughts on Remembrance Day and remembering the end of the First World War?
Yes, it's interesting that we don't give as much attention to November 11 as we do actually to Anzac Day. By the way, I was a few years ago with the Anglican minister at the British Embassy in Ankara who triggered the Anzac Day events on the beaches. And he says that what started out as a one-day event now runs on over 3 days, and the young Australians who go all the way to Turkey for that event are very well behaved. They're great ambassadors for Australia when they're over there. The Australians tend to get a reputation for being on alcohol and drugs, but I tell you, when they're in Anzac Cove, they are fantastic, very well behaved. So yes, we give a lot of attention to the events in April. I think we've also got to be doing the same, I think, for November 11 each year to remember the events of World War I, but also, of course, to remember the other conflicts in which we have been involved since then and even before then. There's been a lot of conflicts in which Australia's been involved. So I think it's important that youngsters get to know more about Australian history. I'm appalled at the lack of historical context that sort of overshadows all of our debates. It's always so immediate, and I think the social media revolution is adding to that sense of immediacy. And there's a lack of context, there's a lack of history. And as they say, those who forget their history are doomed to repeat it.
Well, let's remember a bit of history now, because a lot of people are talking about 2020 being a tough year. We had bushfires, of course. We'll always have bushfires in this country. We've had a bad pandemic, but the world has seen much worse pandemics in the last 100 years. Think about the life of someone born in 1900 and what they would have seen. First World War, Depression, Second World War. Tell us that historical context, just how lucky we have it now.
Absolutely. And I always say to people who complain about life getting worse and all the rest of it, I say, well, just, you know, would you want to be born in the year, say, 1920? You've just had the great flu pandemic, which killed more people than the total number killed in World War I. Imagine what it'd be like going to the dentist in 1920 as compared with 2020.
Whoa.
We made so many advances in science, medicine, health, etc. So I think we're much better off today than we would have been 100 years ago, let alone 200 years ago or 300 years ago.
You mentioned dental work there. I was reading a book recently about Donald Bradman and the fact that he was tortured with teeth pain, as so many people were back in the 40s and 50s, and the only solution was essentially to take all your teeth out. So, yeah, small things, but they must have made a huge difference to the way people live.